Coming up, Alaskans are sending a Native woman to Congress. We learn about the upcoming Urban Tribal Forum in North Dakota, and the National Native American Hall of Fame is ready to induct a new class of outstanding leaders. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover Indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amarao Hopa, thank you for joining us. We start with a new government report about life expectancy showing dismal numbers for Indigenous people. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released data last week showing that American Indians and Alaska Natives have seen one of the most dramatic changes. Data from 2021 says that the life expectancy for American Indians and Alaska Natives is 65 years and 2 months. Researchers say these numbers are an estimate of the average number of years a baby born in 2021 might expect to live, given the death rates at the time. That is a drop of 6 years and 6 months from data in 2019. There are many reasons for this drop, with experts citing COVID-19 as the main cause. Accidental injuries, mostly from drug overdoses, were the second largest contributor. In Canada, preparations have begun for the country's second ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Also known as Orange Shirt Day, the holiday recognizes the legacy of the Canadian residential school system. APTN's Fraser Needham has the latest.
This year, our focus is remembering the children who were taken from their families and subjected to cruel abuse in an effort to suppress the culture and traditions of Indigenous peoples.
That's National Center for Truth and Reconciliation Executive Director Stephanie Scott talking about the upcoming TRC Day. The Trudeau government is investing $4 million in 278 community projects as part of National Truth and Reconciliation Week. Part of this funding will also go to the Ottawa event and a TRC Education Week for Canadian students in grades 1 through 12. At the press conference, Ottawa Centre Liberal MP Yasser Naqvi spoke about what he sees as his role in truth and reconciliation.
I'm an immigrant to this country, and therefore I'm a settler. And it is my responsibility to continue to learn about our tragic past and participate in not only learning but teaching my 2 young children as well.
And Saskatchewan residential school survivor Eugene Arcand talked about what survivors expect of the non-Indigenous population.
We want you to know who we are. Know our names, know our numbers. And we don't want your pity. Don't think for a second that we do what we do because we want people to feel sorry for us. Those days are done. We want real reality. We want to share these truths with adults, but more importantly with young people, because that's who's going to change this country.
Nunavut survivor Lavinia Brown spoke about how she managed to retain her language in spite of attending residential school.
I kept my language from our grandparents. Our grandparents, our ancestors were our strong tools to survive our culture. Yes, I speak my language.
The September 30th Ottawa event takes place right here on LeBreton Flats and will be broadcast live on APTN. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Moving to Africa, where indigenous leaders there say in Nigeria's Osun River is toxic from pollution. For centuries, worshippers have gathered every summer at the sacred river to offer prayers and ask for healing. But religious leaders say the water has become polluted due to the activities of miners and large corporations. They say runoff from dozens of illegal gold mines has filled the river with toxic metals. One priest is asking people to stop drinking water from the river and has reached out to the government for help.
We asked people to stop drinking water from the river since it has become contaminated. Also, I have written to the government of Osun State repeatedly to help stop the miners and mining activities, which the government promised to take action. No action has been taken.
A report from Urban Alert found mercury levels in the water that were 2,000% above the Nigerian industrial standard. As more and more tribal nations consider investing in cannabis, a new organization is highlighting Native voices in the industry. In 2016, the National Congress of American Indians passed a resolution approving cannabis production to promote self-determination. Launched last week, the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association is working to promote equity and economic opportunity for Native people. The nonprofit is the brainchild of Rob Perero. Pero says ICIA will empower the Indigenous community through policy, programming, and outreach initiatives. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, an Alaska Native is packing her bags and headed to Washington, D.C., and we are learning about extraordinary Native people. But first, an Indigenous forum is aiming to address the needs of urban Natives. Stay with us. In 1952, the federal urban relocation program moved thousands of Native people from their tribal lands into cities. Today, census data shows 70% of Indigenous people live away from their communities. Joining us today is Cheryl Carey, who is the executive director of the Sacred Pipe Resource Center located in Mandan, North Dakota. And she's here to tell us about the upcoming Urban Tribal Forum. Welcome back to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's just jump right in here. Tell us about this upcoming gathering and what it means and what you hope to accomplish.
Well, this is our second annual Urban Tribal Forum. We tried the first annual forum last year, and so many people that came to it were really excited about the opportunity for us to come together as an urban tribal population, especially here in North Dakota, where we're a fairly significant portion of the population. We're among the top 10 states, but we're still very few. And so it was a really great opportunity for those of us who live in the urban areas and work in the urban areas to come together and really talk about some of the shared issues that we have as urban tribal residents.
You actually helped with your state's census count to find these numbers. Maybe tell us about that process.
Yeah, I did. So it was really exciting to see some of the American Community Survey numbers that came out. In 2010, North Dakota had just shy of 4.5% of the population as Native American, American Indian, Alaska Native. And we managed to increase that to 6.36% in the 2020 census. And so I think that's through the efforts of a lot of good people just really getting out there and talking about the importance of the census data and participating in the census. So I still think there's problems with the census count. I still think we're undercounted. And I think there's still more work to be done, but it was really great to be part of that process and to know what goes into it. And I think Indian country overall is really going to do a better job in the 2030 census of, creating some awareness and making sure that we know that we're counted, and that we're also participating in the American Community Survey, which gives a lot more data about our population. And then we do Sacred Pipe Resource Center. We do our own survey here, and actually we're doing it right now. We're right in the midst of doing a population survey just for the Bismarck, Mandan, Lincoln area. And I think those types of numbers are also critically important in getting feedback about what the particular issues are.
I mean, let's actually talk more about what those issues are for Native urban people who live in North Dakota. What are some of the main things that you're seeing?
Well, one of the things I think is really a big issue is the isolation and the mental health toll that the isolation takes, just being away from your homelands, away from your family support systems and things like that. When the pandemic started, the COVID pandemic started, we did a survey and asked, what is one of the major impacts on you? And the response is actually, I was surprised, even far above the actual economic hardships. The Native population indicated that it was the mental health toll and the further isolation. And so to me, I think that's a big issue, is how do we connect with each other, and how do we maintain that sense of community as a Native community when we're a very minority population in the urban cities.
Can you maybe talk about, for this urban tribal forum that's going to be held later this week, what kinds of tribal leaders will be present and how receptive they are to learning about these kinds of issues?
Well, we were very fortunate last year. We had tribal representation from each of the tribes attend, and we had a session specifically on how do we do outreach to tribes and how do we connect better with our tribes. This year, we kind of took a step back, and we want to really get more of a picture of each urban area in North Dakota. So when we look at the data from each of the cities, we see that there's several cities that had a significant population increase. Now, whether that's actual increased new people or that's increased people being more responsive to the census, we're not sure. But I guess it's a good question to ask and to bring up at the forum. So most of the major cities in North Dakota had a significant population increase. Devils Lake, Mandan, Devils Lake had like almost 10% increase. Bismarck and Mandan, over 30% increase. Williston had a very significant increase, like 60% increase, largely because of the oil boom. So there are other cities. Minot had a 15% increase. So there are cities where we're seeing more Native people move into the urban areas, and we want to make those urban areas as supportive of environments as we can. And so the Urban Tribal Forum is really about bringing people together from all of those major cities and, doing an assessment of what supports are already there and what do we need to help build.
Well, Cheryl, we'll definitely have to keep tabs on your gathering later this week. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
In just a few months, on November 5th, the National Native American Hall of Fame will induct its new class. These outstanding people have made significant contributions in the fields of government, law, publishing, sports, and entertainment. The National Native American Hall of Fame was established by James Parker Shield in 2016, and he joins us now to talk about the new class. Welcome, James.
Hi, morning.
Thank you so much for being here. I mean, let's just jump right in here. At a high level, tell us about this new class of inductees and some of their contributions.
Well, once again, I think we have a slate of stellar individuals, people that have made notable accomplishments, not for their own lives, but also that have a great impact on Native America in general. At the top of the list, we have Governor Bill Anatubby from the Chickasaw Nation. and John Eckelhawk from Native American Rights Fund, Tim Gallego, who founded Indian Country Today, and also had Native Sun News. You know, those are three of the 9 inductees that we have coming in this year.
I know you could speak at lengths about the process, but how does one get inducted into the National Native American Hall of Fame?
Well, fortunately, I have a national board of directors who have a lot of experience and knowledge about Indian country in general and the people that were impactful. So we get names from our board, but we also get names from other people. Some of them are just by happenstance. You know, you'll be talking to somebody about the Hall of Fame and they'll throw out a name. And one of the things that I think is important for people to realize is it's not a popularity contest to get into the Hall of Fame. You have to be somebody that has achieved greatness or had a great impact on Native America or improving the lives of Native Americans. And so some of those people are well known, some are not so well known. So we have a mixture of both those kind of people.
You know, James, I'm glad you brought that up. Tell us about maybe some of the people in this year's class who aren't so well known and what their accomplishments are.
Well, I think that, I guess if you looked at all 9, you would like to think, well, dang, they're all pretty known. But there's some people that, may not know who Earl Oldperson is from the Blackfeet Nation here in Montana. I do. I've known Earl for many, many years, and I was just a college student when he used to come down and MC our college powwows here in Great Falls. And so I learned a bit about emceeing from Earl. But among the Blackfeet Nation, he was the youngest tribal chairman they had, and he served on their tribal council for decades and decades. And he was a long-serving council member and chairman a number of times. But he not only advocated for the Blackfeet people, but he advocated for Native Americans in general, standing up for their rights and making sure the government would adhere to the treaties that they had with tribes. And the other important thing about Earl Oldperson was he was a cultural bearer. He knew the traditional songs, he knew the ceremonies. And so there was many times when I would see him with his drum group that they called the Rawhide Orchestra. And he and his fellow members of that drum group would always perform and sing songs at different occasions, So I thought that was always one of the neat things about Earl Oldperson was that he was very traditional, and that he carried on the culture, he spoke the language, and at the same time, he was a leader in the modern sense.
What a gift. Thank you for sharing those stories with me today. You mentioned Tim Gallego earlier in this interview, and of course, Tim Gallego passed away very recently. How are you going to honor him, given that he's now in the spirit world?
Well, I've talked with Mrs. Gallego, Jackie, and she plans to be there to accept the award and induction on her husband's behalf. Fortunately, Tim was notified before he passed on that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And my good friend Clara Caulfield at the Cheyenne Voice, who also wrote for the Native Sun News and was a good friend of Tim Gallego's, told me that he was very excited and very pleased to hear that he was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that's one thing I'm very glad happened.
Absolutely. And I want to highlight one more person in this year's class, and that's a very famous basketball star. Tell us about her and, how excited you are to honor her.
Well, since I play a lot of basketball myself, still at an advanced age, she's one of my heroes. Reneldi Vicente from the Navajo Nation was, one of those natives that, was one that broke the barriers and led the way for Native women in particular to achieve greatness on the basketball court. She played for Arizona State University. And from what I understand, it seemed like every time she played, the attendance doubled, in that basketball arena. She also was the first Native American woman to be in the WNBA, and she played for the Phoenix Mercury. So we're very excited to have her. But I think the story doesn't end there for her. One of the things that impressed me the most about Rinaldi was that after her playing days were over, she devoted her life to teaching the game to young Native Americans on the reservation. And so she was at a lot of different basketball camps and taught a lot of young people coming up.
So exciting, definitely. Well, James, thank you so much for being here and for telling us your stories today.
You betcha. I'll see you at the induction ceremony.
Mary Peltola is going to Washington, D.C. Last week's victory in a special election makes her the first Democrat in nearly half a century to represent Alaska in the U.S. House. Her run was history-making. Here to tell us all about it is ICT national correspondent Jocelyn Estes. Welcome, Jocelyn.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
So we're talking about Mary Peltola today. What is your observation about this special election and what it means for Alaskans in the United States Congress?
Well, it was quite the surprise for her to beat Sarah Palin, who has good name recognition, especially in the lower 48, but also in Alaska. And what happened is that well, it was a surprise, but not as big a surprise, I think, to a lot of Alaskans, because Sarah Palin has a lot of high negatives here. She left Alaska to run for national office for vice president, and then she resigned from her position as governor midway into her term, then starred in a reality television series. And she just hasn't been as present on a lot of Alaska issues in recent years. So Peltola is the first Alaska Native. She's Yupik to be elected to Congress. And being Native got her a lot of votes in her part of the state, Western Alaska. 93% of the voters in her mother's home village of Kwethluk voted for her. Alaska Natives are 15% of the population, so that helped. And Natives were thrilled that she won. People are hoping that means she'll be paying some special attention to some of the issues facing rural Alaska, one of them being declining salmon runs, another, the lack of broadband internet access, climate change research, and some 36 villages that lack water and sewer. So, lack running water and flush toilets. So people are thrilled. She says she's going to Washington to represent all Alaskans, and she's a moderate to conservative Democrat from a heavily Republican state. So that helped.
And what strikes me about Mary Peltola is that she herself has a very impressive background. I was reading that she was actually first elected to public office when she was just 24 years old. I want to switch gears and actually talk about how this special election was run, and that was using ranked choice voting. How did that work?
Well, Alaskans voted in a new system last year, and part of it is ranked choice voting. But the other part to it is an open primary. So that means whatever party you're registered to, you can vote for any candidate. And that helped Mary Peltola get in the race. And then with ranked choice voting, you rank your choices. You vote for who you want to win, and then your second and third choices. So what happened with Mary Peltola is she was running against two Republicans, Nick Begich III and Sarah Palin. Peltola came in first place. And then with ranked choice voting, it's sort of like there's an instant runoff. And Begich was in third place. So his second choice ballots went to Peltola and Palin. And about a quarter to a third of his second choice ballots were for Peltola, which put her over in the majority. So she got more than 50% of the vote.
Very quickly here, there will be another election, of course, in November. Tell us what that means for Mary Peltola.
Well, Palin and Begich were both urging the other to drop out of the race so that a Republican could win, but neither has. And they're running negative ads about each other. Her winning, though, is going to get Republicans fired up. What she has going in her favor is that she is pro resource development, and she supports some oil and gas and other mining. She's really knowledgeable about fisheries, and our state constitution protects abortion access, and she's pro-choice. So she's got all that going in her favor.
Absolutely. Well, in the near future, Mary Peltola will head to Washington, D.C., where she'll formally be sworn in as a member of Congress. And of course, ICT will have all of those developments as they happen. But in the meantime, Jocelyn, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.